In the heart of the bustling city stood a modest house, the birthplace of Lawrence Livingston, a boy whose destiny was intertwined with the fates of many in the concrete jungle of finance. From a tender age, Lawrence exhibited an uncanny affinity for numbers, seeing patterns and rhythms in the digits that danced before him in his father's newspaper. He would sit for hours, entranced by the stock quotes, his young mind deciphering the ebb and flow of the market as easily as other children might read their fairy tale books. Lawrence's fascination soon turned into obsession. He turned every surface in his room into makeshift chalkboards, scribbling numbers and drawing charts that only he could understand. In his dreams, he wandered through a mystical market, a bazaar where fortunes were made and lost with the whisper of a rumor, where traders roared like lions over slips of paper that could build empires or crumble them to dust. One fateful day, as the golden autumn sun dipped below the skyline, Lawrence stumbled upon a contest at the local fair, a game of chance and skill where one could guess the next day's closing stock prices. The prize was a golden coin, shiny and unblemished, a week's wages for his father. With a confidence that belied his years, Lawrence stepped up and whispered his predictions, numbers that came to him as clearly as the stars in the night sky. The next day, a hush fell over the fair as the final bell rang on Wall Street. One by one, the prices were read aloud, and a gasp escaped the crowd. Lawrence's predictions were not just close. They were exact, down to the last decimal. The golden coin was his, but it was not the prize that ignited the fire in his eyes, it was the realization of his gift. Word of the boy's uncanny predictions spread like wildfire. Neighbors whispered, businessmen in their finery frowned in contemplation, and somewhere in the shadows, a figure with power and influence took note. Lawrence's life was about to change forever, for better or for worse. The markets that had been a playground for his mind now beckoned him to join their ranks, and he would answer the call, stepping into a world where every triumph and every defeat was etched in the ledger of history. This is the story of Lawrence Livingston, the boy who spoke the language of the stocks, the prodigy who would grow to become a legend in the world of finance. His journey begins not with a trade, but with a whisper of destiny that set him on a path of highs and lows, of fortunes made and morals questioned. Welcome to the saga of the greatest operator the stock market would ever know.
The golden coin, now tucked away in the velvet lining of Lawrence Livingston's drawer, was not just a trophy, it was a symbol of possibility. The whispers of his miraculous predictions had not gone unnoticed, and with a peculiar mix of pride and curiosity, his parents watched as their son, barely into his teens, began to outgrow the confines of their simple life.
As the seasons changed, so too did the atmosphere in the Livingston household. Lawrence, with the unrelenting drive of a river carving its way through the earth, begged his father to allow him to visit the stock exchange. After much deliberation, his father, a man of modest means and prudent nature, agreed. But this was no ordinary visit. This was to be a rite of passage. Clad in his Sunday best, Lawrence's eyes sparkled with anticipation as he walked through the hallowed halls of the exchange. The air was thick with the scent of tobacco and the sound of fortunes being made and lost. It was there, amidst the chaos, that Lawrence made his first trade. With the careful nurturing of his savings and the golden coin as his seed money, he purchased 10 shares of a promising railroad company. Back home, the radio crackled to life each evening, and the family gathered to hear the closing prices. Day by day, Lawrence's investment grew, and with it, his confidence. But the markets are a fickle mistress, and as quickly as the success came, it turned on its head. The railroad company, struck by an unforeseen scandal, saw its shares plummet. Lawrence watched in horror as his winnings evaporated before his eyes. In the dramatic aftermath, as the dust settled, Lawrence's father expected tears, tantrums, or regrets. Instead, he found his son deep in thought, his youthful visage etched with a maturity beyond his years. Lawrence had tasted the intoxicating brew of victory and the bitter gall of defeat. It was a heady lesson, one that money could not buy, and it set ablaze a determination that would define his life. That night, under the starlit sky, Lawrence made a vow. He would not be swayed by the siren calls of luck or rumor. He would learn, adapt, and overcome. He would study the market's language, not just to speak it, but to master it. The path to triumph, he realized, was paved with knowledge, strategy, and an unshakable will. So began the legend of Lawrence Livingston, the boy who would become the most storied stock operator of his time. His journey was fraught with perils and promises, but his resolve was steadfast. For every fall there was to be a rise, for every loss, a lesson. The markets awaited, and so did his destiny. In the dense labyrinth of the city, with its towering buildings clawing at the sky, the young Lawrence Livingston found his sanctuary in the most unlikely of places, a dimly lit brokerage firm nestled between the giants of finance. It was here that he became acquainted with the ticker tape, a mechanical oracle that chattered away, spitting out the fortunes of companies in cryptic symbols and numbers. To the untrained eye, it was nothing but a relentless stream of gibberish. But to Lawrence, it was as if he had found the Rosetta Stone to the language of the financial gods. Day after day, Lawrence stood, fixated by the glass dome that housed the sacred machine. He absorbed its every sound, each tick and each talk etching deeper into his memory. He began to notice patterns, rhythms in the chaos, a symphony conducted by the invisible hand of the market. It was during these hours of quiet observation that Lawrence made an acquaintance that would change the course of his life. Mr. Jonathan Beckett, an old-timer with eyes like an eagle and a mind as sharp as the creases in his suit, took note of the boy who visited the ticker tape with religious fervor. Beckett, a trader with decades of experience, saw a spark in Lawrence that reminded him of his own youth. He decided to take the boy under his wing, to mold this raw talent into something formidable. Under Beckett's tutelage, Lawrence learned to decode the tape, to understand the significance of volume, the ebb of supply and demand, and the impact of news events. But it was Beckett's next lesson that would serve as the dramatic pivot in Lawrence's education. The numbers tell a story, Lawrence, Beckett would say, but to truly excel, you must also read the people behind them. It was the eve of a significant market event, and the air was abuzz with anticipation. Beckett pointed out the nervous ticks of the floor traders, the hushed conversations by the phones, the subtle signals that betrayed their inner turmoil. Lawrence watched, fascinated, as Beckett predicted the market's movement with uncanny accuracy, not through the numbers alone, but by reading the very soul of the market. The following day, armed with Beckett's insights and his own interpretations, Lawrence made a series of trades that left the brokerage firm in awe. The young boy had not only read the market but played it like a virtuoso. As the closing bell rang, the firm erupted in cheers for the young prodigy who had, in one day, turned a modest sum into a small fortune. Yet, as the celebration continued around him, Lawrence's gaze returned to the ticker tape, its relentless dance a reminder of the endless lessons yet to be learned. He realized then that his journey was not just about mastering the market, but about understanding the very pulse of human nature intertwined with it. The ticker tape had become his mentor, the brokerage his arena, and the market his muse. Lawrence Livingston's legend grew not just in the records of profits and losses, but in the stories whispered in the corridors of power and the quiet nods of respect among those who recognized a true operator. The stage was set for his ascent, and the world of finance would never be the same. The flickering gas lamps of the city cast long shadows as Lawrence Livingston walked the cobblestone streets, his mind buzzing with the electricity of his recent triumphs. Yet, the young prodigy yearned for more, the pulsating thrill of the trade, the sweet nectar of victory. It was this unquenchable thirst that led him to the infamous bucket shops of the city, clandestine establishments where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye, beyond the scrutiny of the more regulated exchanges. Bucket shops were the Wild West of the financial world, where men gambled on stock prices in a game rigged against the unwise and the unlucky. Here, the stakes were high and the rules were simple. Traders bet on the movement of stocks without actually buying them, and the house settled the bets. It was a place of smoke and mirrors, a den where the sharpness of one's wit was the only currency of value. Lawrence, with his razor-sharp instincts and a mind that raced ahead of the ticking tape, found himself at home among the chaos. His reputation as a prodigy had preceded him, and as he stepped through the doors of the biggest bucket shop in the city, a hush fell upon the crowd. They had heard of the boy who could read the market's secrets, and they were eager to witness his magic. The air was thick with tobacco and anticipation as Lawrence placed his first bet. With a deft hand and a steady gaze, he predicted the rise and fall of stocks with such precision that the patrons watched in a mixture of awe and disbelief. Trade after trade, his initial modest bet multiplied as if by alchemy. The owners of the shop, with their gilded waistcoats and false smiles, began to regard Lawrence with a mixture of respect and wariness. Word of Lawrence's exploits spread like wildfire, drawing crowds that spilled into the streets, eager for a glimpse of the boy wonder. With each visit, his legend grew, but so did the tension. The bucket shops, unaccustomed to a player who could beat them at their own game, began to conspire against him. One autumn night, as the rain tapped against the windows like a coded message, Lawrence's fortunes took a dramatic turn. The shop, under the guise of a celebration in his honor, had laid a trap. They manipulated the reported prices, turning Lawrence's near-certain bets into disastrous losses. As the reality of the situation dawned on him, the room spun, and he realized the cruel lesson at hand: the house always wins. But they had underestimated Lawrence Livingston. His gaze hardened, and in that moment of betrayal, he found a clarity that would define his future strategies. He understood that to survive in the world of finance, one must be as shrewd as a street hustler and as unyielding as steel. As he walked out of the bucket shop, his wallet lighter but his resolve steeled, a defiant smile played upon his lips. For every scheme contrived against him, he would devise a countermove. The bucket shops had taught him a valuable lesson in cunning and deceit, but in doing so, they had forged their own nemesis. The chapter of the bucket shops closed, but the story of Lawrence Livingston was just beginning. The streets that led him there would now pave the way to greater arenas, where the stakes were higher and the players more formidable. The Prodigy was ready to step into the limelight of Wall Street, where his talents would either cement his legacy or lead to his undoing. The transformation of Lawrence Livingston from a sharp-minded bucket shop trader to a respected Wall Street financier was not without its trials. With each successful trade, Lawrence's confidence swelled, but so too did the complexity of the challenges he faced. The financial world of Wall Street was a web of alliances, rivalries, and unspoken rules, a maze that Lawrence navigated with both caution and daring. As autumn turned to winter, Lawrence's strategies began to bear fruit. He had developed a keen eye for undervalued stocks, a patience for long-term gains, and a discipline to cut losses before they spiraled. Yet, for all his financial acumen, Lawrence understood that on Wall Street information was currency. To this end, he cultivated a network of informants and allies, from the custodians who cleaned the trading floors to the executives who dined in the city's finest clubs. One evening, as the city lay blanketed in snow, Lawrence received a tip about an emerging technology company. Its innovations had the potential to revolutionize industries, but its stock was languishing, misunderstood by the market. Sensing an opportunity, Lawrence pored over research, dissected balance sheets, and met with the company's leadership under the guise of anonymity. His due diligence complete, Lawrence invested a significant portion of his capital into the company. It was a gamble that raised eyebrows among his peers, who whispered doubts and predictions of his downfall. But Lawrence, guided by his conviction and the lessons of his mentors, held steady. The months that followed were tense. The stock wavered, tested by market volatility and the skepticism of investors. But then, as if the dam had burst, the company announced a breakthrough. Its stock soared, and with it, Lawrence's reputation was cemented. He had not just made a fortune, he had made history. Yet, success on Wall Street was a double-edged sword. Lawrence's triumph brought him wealth and accolades, but it also painted a target on his back. Rivals envied his success, and speculators sought to emulate his strategies. Lawrence found himself at the center of a whirlwind of attention, both wanted and unwarranted. In the midst of this, Thomas Wainwright, his mentor and confidant, offered a word of caution. "Remember, Lawrence," he said, "the taller the tree, the stronger the wind that seeks to topple it. Stay true to your principles, but beware the dangers that success brings. Lawrence took these words to heart. As chapter 5 closes, we see a man at a crossroads, basking in the glow of his achievements yet aware of the shadows they cast. His initiation into Wall Street was complete, but the journey ahead was fraught.